The most talked about case in the nation is the murder of little JonBenet Ramsey. After 14 months, police have still not found her killer. But now new information is beginning to surface, and that case that once seemed unsolvable may now be nearing a conclusion. What happened to the 6-year-old who wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps as a beauty queen?
1977, Patsy Paul Ramsey.
You say neither, and I say neither, 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 neither. Let's call the whole thing off.
Who could have killed this pretty little girl with seemingly no enemies? Boulder police are running through a checklist of 80 items they hope will help them single out the killer.
At this point, they're eliminating. They're crossing their T's and dotting their I's and trying to explain all kinds of little things inside that house, and there were hundreds of them, so that when they go after this person, there'll be no question that this person did it, and this person will be charged and brought to trial.
Things like a specific phrase from the ransom note, a mysterious blue fiber found on JonBenet's body, and something as simple as pineapple could finally help police crack this case. First, here's the Ramseys' account of Christmas night 1996. John and Patsy Ramsey returned home from a Christmas party with JonBenet and her brother Burke sometime after 9 p.m. Patsy Ramsey says JonBenet was already asleep when they got home, so she put JonBenet to bed in the same clothes she wore to the party. Sometime between bedtime and dawn, JonBenet was murdered. According to the autopsy report, the cause of death was strangulation after suffering a severe blow to the head.
The blow itself would have been capable of causing her death, but it didn't. She was strangled before it killed her.
Mrs. Ramsey says she woke up before dawn the next morning, discovered the ransom note on the spiral staircase, claiming JonBenet had been kidnapped. By 7 a.m., police were in the house, working the case and waiting for the kidnapper's call. Police told John Ramsey to check the house to see if anything had been disturbed. Ramsey, accompanied by family friend Fleet White Jr., went right to the basement. He opened one door. There, in a seldom-used room, he found JonBenet's body. As is often the case when a child is killed inside the home, the parents, John and Patsy Ramsey, were among the first to be placed under an umbrella of suspicion.
I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
I did not have anything to do with it.
Despite public suspicions, the Ramseys maintained their innocence from the start, and inexperienced Boulder police were criticized for running a sloppy investigation. But nearly 14 months after JonBenet was killed, the Ramseys are still a focus of the police investigation. And now, some of the people who knew them best are beginning to wonder.
I'll tell you, there are a lot of people out there who are more and more suspicious the longer this goes on.
Fox News Channel correspondent Carol McKinley has been covering this case since the beginning. She learned the police are trying to piece together a psychological profile of Patsy by re-interviewing Ramsey family friends. What they are hearing paints an interesting picture of Patsy as a charming yet controlling woman.
They're both strong, but that she is not some withering magnolia, that she is a very strong woman.
McKinley says the single most important piece of evidence may be the ransom note.
It's got handwriting on it. It's got no prints. Whoever wrote that note wore gloves. So you've got to look at things like linguistics, at phrasing, at the way some of the words were formed, the letters were formed.
Robert Ressler, a former FBI profiler, has compiled a behavioral profile of the person who wrote the note.
In my opinion, the person that wrote this note is college educated. They're articulate, they're bright, they're worldly, and they're female. I think it's a mature female.
Police don't believe John Ramsey wrote the note, but they have not eliminated Patsy. So they're looking closely at other writing samples, especially those written by Patsy. For example, the phrase "and hence" in the ransom note is the exact same phrase used in a Ramsey family Christmas message. JonBenet's injuries are also key to the investigation as to who might have killed her. What caused the severe head injury that rendered JonBenet helpless? Medical examiner Ron Wright believes the injury did not come from a sharp object.
The skin was not lacerated or torn. If you hit somebody with something like a 2x4 or a hammer or a flashlight, it tears the skin. This has to be something flat.
Wright believes JonBenet's head could have been smashed against a wall, either by accident or by force. And there is more forensic evidence police are still reviewing that has recently come to light.
The coroner found fibers on her body. They were blue, like blue lint, little pillings, and they found them in her vaginal area. Her body had been wiped down. So where those fibers come from?
Police investigators looking to find a match for the fibers have examined evidence from a number of people connected to this case. They recently received clothing the Ramseys were reportedly wearing on Christmas Day. Scientists in this Colorado Bureau of Investigation lab use special lights to look for the tiniest fibers that might match those found on JonBenet.
Different body fluids fluoresce or glow under these different wavelengths of light.
The autopsy report also revealed that JonBenet had eaten pineapple on Christmas Day, a simple fact that may now be a key to solving this case.
I'm hearing that there was no pineapple at any of the parties the Ramseys attended. When did the child eat the pineapple? Did the Ramseys lie to the police when they said they put her right to bed? Did they actually go down and get her a snack and give her a pineapple? And if so, then why did they lie? The pineapple could be an important clue.
Because the investigation has taken so long, and because the Ramseys publicly don't appear to be cooperating with police, even some of their closest friends and staunchest supporters are starting to wonder.
I really feel that this murder has divided the friends up into virtually two different camps.
Judith Phillips had been a close friend of Patsy Ramsey for 14 years. Their families even moved to Boulder from Atlanta about the same time. Last March, she was informed the Ramseys no longer wanted to have anything to do with her.
How they've treated me has given me insight into where they are right at this particular moment. I believe that there has been more effort made in the cover-up following the murder than the murder itself. I think something terrible happened in that house, and I feel that those individuals, Patsy and John, have an insight as to what happened.
Fleet White Jr., who was with John when JonBenet's body was found, recently wrote an editorial calling for a special prosecutor to be appointed in the case. He criticized prosecutors, saying, among other things, there is a strong impression that the Boulder County District Attorney has acted improperly because he says prosecutors shared evidence with Ramsey attorneys. He even asked Colorado Governor Roy Romer to intervene. Romer refused to step in, but the editorial is said to be a strong indication that White no longer supports the Ramseys. Linda Hoffman, who cleaned house for the Ramseys 3 days a week, still stands by them.
John and Patsy didn't have anything to do with killing that little girl. And if they did, if it's proven that they did, I'll never trust anybody the rest of my life because I never seen anything but a loving, kind, wonderful family.
Other people who were close to the Ramseys agree, including Pam Griffin, who made some of JonBenet's pageant costumes.
Anyone who knew her could never have harmed her. That's why I feel it must be someone, who was not within the family or who did not know her.
Griffin's daughter befriended JonBenet. She helped teach JonBenet dance steps and even babysat for her.
I'd pretty much grown out of babysitting, but I never passed up an opportunity to spend time with her. She kept a smile on my face.
What happened to this precious little princess, the 6-year-old who wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps as a beauty queen?
People close to the case tell me that they believe someone inside the family did this. The police know who killed this child.
Boulder police are still painstakingly piecing together the elusive evidence they think will prove who killed JonBenet Ramsey. So what really happened in the Ramsey home on Christmas night? Well, here in San Francisco, the city has been playing host to a conference of the best forensic scientists in the world. When we come back, we'll give you their unique perspective on this unique case.
Up next,
at a conference dealing with death.
Well, you have a full wall-mounted autopsy facility.
The experts duked it out over what happened to JonBenet.
It's the most complex.
It's really all they have.
The guy that came in from the outside that killed her forgot to bring papers.
Many people believe
If you're the Ramseys, you're thinking to yourself, should I entrust to the police that they will do the right thing?
A person that's going to mash somebody in the head and cause this awful blow, put a garrote around the neck and strangle, probably would have been in a frenzy.
I think that this is one of the most botched investigations.
the footprint, the miscellaneous handprint we're hearing about now, the fibers. These are all coming from neighbors who called the press and said, hey, the police just called and asked me, was I in the basement?
Last week, San Francisco hosted a conference of the world's top forensic scientists and detectives. And the talk of that conference was the JonBenet Ramsey case. A few minutes ago, we showed you the latest developments in that case. And now we're going to go inside the conference to listen in on the experts to see if they can spot anything the police missed.
I would like to officially welcome you to the golden anniversary meeting of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. And I thank you all for coming to San Francisco for this meeting.
He was shot. He has what looks to be just a classic gunshot wound to the side of his head.
And amazingly, some of these bodies are preserved. Amazingly preserved.
It's absolutely amazing, particularly with the Lewinsky case and all that.
We don't let assholes upset us. Just another wienerhead that wants it his way on the jury.
We need a contract now, Dave.
Right, I know.
Well, you have a full wall-mounted autopsy facility with an autopsy cart.
Slick, he didn't survive the car accident, so we're going to bioseal him.
This is the Crime Scope forensic light source.
We're here to sell lots of products to DNA scientists.
Welcome to the cafe. May I help you?
The time of death was somewhere probably November of '89.
Right.
Well, they find the woman in 1995, still in the house.
Oh, God.
About 55 pounds of bones.
What do you have here? I'll tell you what you have. You have a person who is dead, JonBenet Ramsey, and as we sit here, to my knowledge, some 14 months later, there's nothing of a definitive nature, any forensic evidence, that would place someone else at the scene.
It's a staged crime. It's a staged event.
Right. Well, look at the note. Yeah. I mean, the note is an obvious stage. That is not.
When you consider, consider all this. Consider all this that takes place. That we just
if you sit down and write that note, which was written in left hand, by the way, if you sit down and write that thing with your left hand, 2.5 pages, single space like that, doing this, if you're right-handed. I tell you what. First of all, your hand gets tired after a page, but it takes at least. This thing takes 35 minutes to write out. Just sitting out.
Of course.
That's a long time. Besides the fact that there's a lot into it as far as ideas and
it's the most
sum of money, the SBTC, two big bank trading center reference. Come on.
It's really all they have.
Involved ransom note.
And where's the paper come from?
Yeah.
The paper was in the house, right?
It comes from a notepad that was in the house. In fact, the way it was found.
The guy that came in from the outside that killed her forgot to bring paper.
Yeah.
And he forgot when he wrote the ransom note, hey, she's already dead downstairs in the basement. That's a bad ethnic joke.
And the Sharpie pen it was written with was also found inside the home. The FBI did figure that out.
But aren't you also trying to put some rationality on what we all agree is a crazy, sadistic event? You sit here and you try to, analyze
Criminal patterns is what we're looking at here. And when you're seeing them, when they fly in the face of each other, you see criminal patterns that are consistent. When you see dynamics flying in the face of each other and conflicting, it tells you something's greatly wrong here.
Well, there's no doubt
a simple formula. Put up a simple formula. Note at the house, Mrs. Ramsey finds at 5 a.m. and 5:30 in the morning, the child shouldn't have been there. It's a ransom note.
Tell me this, why were there no prints on that note? Now, that's strange. Someone wore gloves.
I don't know that, But
Yeah, well, if you wear...
How can there be no prints?
Yeah.
No prints.
let
They
me
looked
finish
at the
my
heel of
point.
the hand.
I think it's important because it tells the whole story. The notes in the house found at 5:30 in the morning by Mrs. Ramsey. The child shouldn't have been there. The child's in the basement dead. You shouldn't find a note. When the note and the child are dead, these are these conflicting things. You don't write a ransom note saying get $118,000 when you'd kill the kid and leave her in the basement.
Leave her in the basement.
This person would have to be psychotic to do something like that. But if he were psychotic, he couldn't enter the house, go into the house, go to the second floor, get the child, bring her probably down that spiral staircase, bring her down to the first level, bring her down to the second level, kill her, go back up and get some paper, go back down and write the note, go back up to the second level and leave the note and leave. How long is that going to take you?
Well, I don't know.
And a psychotic person is not going to be that organized.
You know, might have been psychotic when he did a whole lot of very involved
He was
things.
he was suffering from a very specific type of psychosis. That's paranoia, where you retain a lot of your intellect.
But whatever. I mean, you know, all I'm saying is that we're talking about trying to create a crystal ball, and I don't know that, you know, Cyril's got an explanation. You've got an explanation, Carol. What have you heard about, you know, different theories? The theories of the
Well, there are three. There's one that the father did it, the mother was an accomplice. There's one the mother did it, the father was an accomplice, and there is the intruder theory. And we've got like 5 different intruders.
By some people, by some people.
You look at the different kinds of intruders they've thrown out.
That the brother.
You got the 9-year-old brother.
But the brother is really a witness.
I'm not saying it's my
Many people believe the brother had something to do with it, but he's an important witness.
Which does explain, from one perspective, why the mother and father would stick together like this and would look anybody in the eye in the cameras and your cameras or somebody else's and say, you know, I did not kill my child. Of course, that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth, but I'm saying, you know, it's one psychological explanation for their ability to do that.
Well, we actually did work on the Rodney King case where they analyzed the videotape, looked at, did some testing on baton strikes, how much force it would take, you know, an officer to, and they strike a person.
I found particles as small as a flea leg. Frank goes, yeah, and a flea's knee.
When you want to identify people, and you know, you go to the OJ trial where they're trying to find a DNA marker and identify a person by their actual DNA structure.
We talk about the fact that there was no DNA found from outside the family, but there was some under her fingernails. I think what police are looking at now, and pathologists are talking about and agreeing and disagreeing over, is the DNA which was under her fingernails was cracked and hardened. It was old DNA. It was not hunks of skin that she got from fighting off an attacker. So that DNA under her fingernails is not going to prove anything.
No, that's the family wouldn't need anything. Right, that's not.
So we're still down to the no outside DNA and the no breaking
I have it from pretty reliable sources that there is no DNA evidence that is being reviewed, at least by the DNA experts.
What would DNA under the fingernails? What would hairs and fibers? I mean,
but fibers that they, you know, supposedly they have fibers.
What would a defense attorney say about that? They live there.
No, but I don't care where those fibers are found, even in her vaginal area.
Well, that's supposedly it's found.
But that can still explain it away.
What happens if it's fiber that doesn't come from the Ramsey's house?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
That if it's in the vaginal area, then indeed that would be significant.
But this is what I keep on coming back to. Listen to all the different ways that we can, and when we discuss this case, oh yeah, that it could go that way, it could go that way.
But what we've seen thus far, we're talking about what we've seen.
If you don't have anything to hide, why are you trying to hide anything? But if your child had been brutally murdered, would you indeed be willing to subject yourself to this media circus and to all these things, especially if you had the financial means to separate yourself from that?
Yeah, but the stress has got to be pretty tough.
No, I think it was
it
just one of the parents, then eventually the other one would give in.
would figure it out.
Yeah.
And if it's both, then one of them's going to make a slip.
Most of these discussions and debates and differences of opinion, I think, have centered around the fact, yes, Ramseys, no Ramseys. The issue may well be which Ramsey. A jury, ultimately, will determine whether, with reasonable medical certainty, whether or not there is any evidence there from another person. The Ramseys, then, as defendants in a trial, will have every right to convince the jury that they did not do it.
Well, that's not what we do in America, okay? What we do in America is have a government that says, I believe that I have evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's when I bring the case. Not let's throw it out for a jury to decide and see if the Ramseys, if we bring them into court, can prove otherwise.
They did allow us to do some DNA analysis.
It's clear the color changed. There must be a chemical reason for
No
that.
embalming. Godfrey, you got to understand.
get
No
it.
embalming.
Really good. Everybody seems to know you.
Yeah, they act like it whether they do or not.
And I thank you all for coming to San Francisco for this meeting.
Let me tell you something. I'm also the parent of a murdered child, and I know exactly what the Ramseys are going through because I've walked in their shoes. But it seems as though a wedge has been driven between the police, the Ramseys, and the DA's office. That can't be. As tough as it is, the Ramseys have got to work with the police. And the police have to cooperate and work with the DA's office. You've got to remember there's a child killer still out there. And the only way to resolve this is by cooperation. This is the way to get justice, and so little JonBenet can rest in peace.